Hello and welcome. It is a special emergency edition of 3:10 to Left. We come to you from Dallas, site of the winter meetings. I'm Tom Caron from Nesson, and we are with the man who broke the story, Julian McWilliams of the Boston Globe. The first to report today that the Red Sox had traded for Garrett Crochet. They officially made the announcement not long after that. First of all, Julian, congratulations on the scoop.
Hey, thanks. Thank you. I'm getting what I can.
It's, you know what? Craig Breslow told me it's gratifying to do a deal like this at the winter meeting because everyone's here. It's gratifying to get a scoop like that because everyone's here. You are the toast of the baseball media world.
I guess so for right now, right? But then you move on to the next one, you know? Next can't get too high, can't get too low, right?
There you go. I like it. Spoken like a veteran. Let's talk about the deal, beginning with Crochet. They got the ace. They got the top of the rotation guy. We'll get to maybe some questions about him in a couple of minutes. But the whiff rate, best in baseball last year, 35%. Big, left-handed, throws hard. He's only 25 years old. His best years, his prime baseball seasons lie ahead of him. They got a good one.
CC, I'm excited. I'm excited to go to the ball field. I remember we were just walking over here, and I just said, these are the type of guys like the Sale prime time guys that you love watching in prime time, like David Price, Chris Sale. Obviously, Pedro Martinez is another level, but it's an ace. You go to the field saying, I got an ace on the mound today. This is going to be a good game to watch. And the Red Sox have that. And like you said, he's young, only 25 years old, 2 more years of control. The Red Sox have proven that their pitching infrastructure works, and they'll be able to get a lot out of guys. I'm excited to see what they have for him.
Yeah, I just hope Andrew Bailey doesn't tell him not to throw a fastball because it's a good fastball.
Yeah. You got to throw that one. It
is one of the best fastballs in baseball, certainly left-handed. Right? I mean, this guy has velocity. And that's one thing they talked about in the bullpen. But I think overall, you know, they shied away from the fastball last year because they didn't have a lot of guys with elite fastballs. They wanted to change that. Say what you will about Chapman. He throws hard.
100%. Now
you bring in Garrett Crochet. He throws hard. They are changing the dynamic of this pitching staff.
Yeah, and Cora said it, you know, going into the offseason. Actually, in fact, he said it last year. He's like, we need to get more lefties that throw hard. I know you had like Joe Jakes, Brendan Bernardino. Yes, they have some stuff that's able to work and get hitters out, but in those high leverage situations, the Red Sox just didn't have that reliever. Now they have that reliever plus a starter. I think this is a good winter meeting for the Red Sox.
He's only 25 years old. He's got 2 years of control left, so 2 arbitration years. I think I saw the projections around $3 million, what you would expect to get, and if he has a good year, that's going to go way up next year. What are the odds they can get an extension done with this guy sooner rather than later?
I think it's certainly a possibility. You know, Craig Breslow said earlier that he just wants to get to know him a little bit more. Obviously, they want to build up his pitch count because he just, you know, transitioned to being a starter, right? He came up as a reliever. But I think that's probably in the works. It has to be in the works. I mean, you could probably get him at a discounted rate just because he hasn't reached his peak yet. So why would you want to wait to do that deal sort of down the road when he's already developed a little bit more? You want to get him right now.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, if he's going to make, again, throwing a number out there, but if the projections are $3 million in arbitration this coming year, if you gave him low-end starter money for the next 4 or 5 years, beginning now, he's going to make a lot more money, right? I mean, you give him $20 million a year beginning now, and that would make sense for him to sign.
And he throws hard. He's a Tommy John guy, right? So there's a health factor there that you have to watch out for. And the fact that he does throw hard is a little bit more of a concern for can he stay healthy. But so I think you have that on your side as well. But, I mean, look, just like we've been saying, they needed a top-of-the-line pitcher, and they got it.
Tommy John surgery in 2022. Spent a little time on the IL again this year. Are there health concerns about this guy?
Certainly. I think when you have that type of stuff, there's always the health concern. But I think the reward outweighs the risk in this case. And look, the Red Sox have been sort of risk-averse for all these years, and I think this sends a solid message to their fans. I know they still have to work to do in free agency. They still have all that money that they were going to give to Soto. They still have that on the books. But to make that type of move in free agency, not to hoard prospects, not to overthink a trade or when it gets to the finish line, not to nitpick at, Crochet doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. No, they got the guy that they wanted who has great stuff that they feel that they can amplify, and good for them.
Does it matter that he doesn't have a long track record as a starter, or could that even be a positive in a way that he doesn't have the mileage on that arm that a lot of young pitchers already have?
I think it's a positive. I mean, I think if they had got him last year, there would have been a little bit more of a concern. But we saw him go out there and produce. The second time, in the second half of the season when he faced the Red Sox, he was not the same pitcher he saw in the first half. But when we were in Chicago that time, he was dominant as I've ever seen any pitcher. And I got a text from one player who texted me, said, he's a really damn good pitcher who played with him. So that tells you everything you need to know.
They like the makeup too, and there were some questions about that. Remember at the trade deadline last year, that story came out that he didn't want to get traded and wasn't going to pitch in the playoffs if he didn't get an extension. Now again, that had kind of Steven Strasburg vibes, right? We can't extend him, and it was the first year he really was a starter for a whole year. Are there any concerns about the makeup? Because everything I've heard today from a lot of different sources is they love the makeup of the guy.
No, I mean, I think he's obviously a young kid. Hurt. It's probably the first time he's ever had a real injury like that. I don't think there's any questions about the makeup. If one thing that I've seen with this organization is that they do a really good job of vetting the players, et cetera. But I don't really see that as an issue.
Any concerns about his availability, over the long haul?
Certainly.
Is this a guy they think he's just going to be able to take the ball every fifth day?
I mean, you got to wait and see. But the reward of it, the upside of this guy, the sort of the build of him, the body. You mentioned the fastball, the ride, the swing and miss. You just see everything that can be the best. He's a Cy Young award. He's a guy that can win a Cy Young someday if he goes on if he can tap into what people think he is, and he's already an excellent starter.
All right, so as it stands right now, we know they have work to do. Certainly, we'll get to that. They want a right-handed bat. They want help in the bullpen. All of that. Just on the rotation side right now, is it enough? I know they want to add. But if they don't, is it enough? Is Crochet above, Houck and Bayo and Giolito and Crawford? Would that be enough right now, or do they need another starter?
I think they should probably go out and get another starter, right? I mean, I don't know if it's going to come in free agency. I don't know if it's going to be Corbin Burns, right? There's been reports out there saying that they don't want to go necessarily and spend that much for Corbin Burns. But you still got Castillo out there, right? You still got players they were able to keep their players like Wilyer Abreu, Casas, and all those names. Are those names that you throw into a trade for one Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo? I see that as a possibility.
Framber Valdez, if the Houston Astros are actually serious about that. Rumors came out here that they are interested in trading him.
There are avenues that the Red Sox can get to still make this an elite pitching staff. I still think they need one more guy.
I agree with that totally, and I think it's interesting that you bring up those guys because I think Casas and Abreu, not that they want to trade them, but if they're available, that to me didn't make sense with Chicago because Chicago's rebuild is longer than 2 years.
Yep.
Right? If you're not going to be good for 3 years, like a competitor for 3, if you're going to go through what the Red Sox have just gone through, then Casas is almost at free agency. You're losing a couple years of Abreu's prime, right? So that doesn't make sense. That's why it's 4 minor leaguers. But those guys, to Seattle, like you mentioned, Seattle's window is now.
Yes.
And they've got maybe the best rotation in baseball, and one of the worst offenses in baseball. Right. You drop Casas and Abreu into that mix, that's a whole different offense.
Completely different offense. The last 2 years, their team, in 2023, they got off to a slow start. But their pitching is what was able to sustain. Now, I know they didn't make the playoffs that year either. But the fact that their pitching was able to sustain them the entire season. This year, the worst offense in baseball, but their pitching was able to keep them afloat. If you add a Wilyer Abreu and a Tristan Casas to that mix, you really have something with that ball club.
All right, so we kept hearing the word uncomfortable over the last couple of days from Craig Presley. You're going to have to do something uncomfortable. They did.
Yeah.
They gave up a lot. This was a big package. We can talk about the Red Sox getting an ace. Potential Cy Young Award winner, like you said, which is what they did. And that's what a team that feels it's a piece or two away does. So the Red Sox feel pretty good about themselves. Didn't touch the Major League roster. All good for the Red Sox. Yeah. For the White Sox, this is a Bartolo Colon type trade. Go look that up, right? Like a trade that completely jumpstarts the rebuild. They got 4 pretty good prospects, 3 of them in the top 100, right, the way it plays out. Beginning with Teel, the catcher of the future for the Red Sox. What does this do to the Red Sox catching scene? Because we all thought Kyle Teel was going to be the catcher of the future. Now, you don't have the catcher of the future. You don't have a backup right now. And there's still a question over whether or not Connor Wong is the catcher of the short-term future.
Right. And look, Connor Wong had a breakout season offensively. Defensively, he was one of the worst catchers in the league last year.
Big step back defensively from the year before.
Huge step back between framing, blocking. Even in the beginning of the season, throwing runners out was an issue. He sort of corralled that in a little bit. But, yeah, I think that's a huge question mark. I think the fact that he is – I see him as a backup, so to speak, but – Breslow said he has very much confidence in him, that Jason Varitek has worked with him this offseason. They feel like he's improving at that position. I mean, we got to remember, he came up as a infielder, right? His freshman year at University of Houston, he was their shortstop. So it's a completely different ball game that he's playing behind there. But he's got to be able to be able to block better. He's got to be able to block to frame better. I think that was just an issue for him last year, and it just sort of spiraled out of control.
Chase Mydroth, they love the guy. The organization loved the guy. He can hit, but there wasn't a clear path. It wasn't even like a detoured path. There was just no path, barring several injuries, to get him to the Boston Red Sox.
No, and look, like he's a guy who has a great eye, right? He controls the strike zone, makes hard contact. It's weird when you see him in a clubhouse. He sort of looks like an 11th grader in there or something like that, like the awkward 11th grader. But then you go out and see him on the field, it's like, wow, this guy can hit. So, the positioning thing is a little bit weird. I know he plays a little bit of third, but he's probably better, if you put him at second base. But I mean, he's a guy who can hit. And Teel, that's another guy you're talking about who's probably, arguably, the best hitting catching prospect in baseball.
Right. I think they lost. I think the scouting report on Teel that I've heard from the Red Sox and from others is he can hit. He'll be a very good hitting catcher. He's very good defensively in blocking. The final hurdle for him is going to be calling games. Right. Is going to be managing a staff. And that's always the biggest challenge for a major league catcher. Can you be a guy who handles a staff? If he can, he's going to be a catcher at the major league level for a long, long time. Yeah, and look, I mean, you talk about his makeup, and they talked about, Alex Cora talked about him and just how tedious he is in his work when he saw him come to the rookie development camp last year. So it's there. It's just a matter of being able to have the experience at the big league level, at the minor league level of handling a pitching staff, having that experience, going through those struggles. Is it a blow to the Worcester clubhouse that DJ Bass Monkey will no longer be spinning the tunes after games? Yeah, but you know what? You got to keep the vibes high. You got to find a new guy, right? Like, who's the new guy they're going to get? Next man up. Yeah, next man up. DJ's got to have the same mentality as the field. Wickleman Gonzalez, a pitcher, but again, down on the depth chart for this team. And I think, the Braden Montgomery inclusion is really interesting. You talk about the number 12 pick in the draft last year. Yeah. Never played a game for the Boston Red Sox organization. Never got in a game. And talking to evaluators, like, he's a wild card. Like, there were questions because he had injury history, but the Red Sox loved him and jumped on him. And some people told me this guy could be a stud. Mm-hmm. You won't know for a while, which is why for Chicago, I think it makes a lot of sense. This is a guy they can look at a few years down the road, and that coincides with when they start to compete again. Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, the Red Sox went through that when they traded for Connor Wong, right? Like, everybody thought that Alex Verdugo was a headliner to trade. Yes, he was the headliner, but Connor Wong's the only one that's still here and being productive. And look how much he improved. Look how much he became a better hitter. I didn't know Connor Wong had it in him to be able to hit for such average like that, like how he did last year. So the fact sneaky power. The fact, Pete Fatsi tells me a funny story. He says, pound for pound, like in a home run derby, he would put Connor Wong second behind Rafael Devers. Wow. So that's the type of power he has. The type of juice he has in his bat. But I think from the White Sox side, they got to take the Red Sox plan of, like, it's all about developing these guys, cultivating a culture, because that was gone for so long with them. Is a lot of turnover. You had the Tim Anderson stuff going on. Obviously, the losing, the historical season that they had. There needs to be a culture shift and identity change, and I think it starts with Teel. What's next for the Red Sox now? The big trade done. The Aroldis Chapman deal announced officially, the signing free agency. So they've added some velocity to the bullpen. They've added a guy at the top of the rotation. What else do they have to accomplish? I think they do need to go out there and get a right-handed bat. If it's Teoscar Hernandez, you got to give up a compensation pick.
whatever, you got to do what you got to do. I think if it's Alex Bregman, you have to get that bat. It's so important. You know, we talk about Trevor Story, who seemed to be like their only guy in recent years, and I know he hasn't played, that was your infielder, your middle infielder that could put the ball out of the ballpark and pull it. You need guys that can be able to pull the ball at Fenway Park, and they just haven't had that. That's why you got to get off some of them lefties.
Two very different hitters, Teoscar Hernandez and Alex Bregman.
Yeah.
Right? Teoscar Hernandez is a power bat.
Yeah.
Kind of a pull power bat that plays at Fenway. Alex Bregman's got a swing for Fenway, maybe not the same type of power, but he's got power. He's a winner, though.
Yeah.
We've seen that, right? I mean, Houston and he and Alex Cora had the connection. There was a reported falling out between them, but by all accounts, they've sort of buried the hatchet. Everything's good there. But the numbers we are hearing on some of these free agent contracts, and again, everyone agrees that the Red Sox have the money to spend and they should spend more. But there is a value equation there. And the numbers they're talking about with Bregman are shocking to me. I mean, he's a really good player, but I never would have thought he's going to get the kind of money they're talking about now.
And I don't know if he gets it, right? I don't know if there's, because the Yankees already say he's not really a fit for them. He doesn't really, his swing doesn't really fit Yankee Stadium. So that's one team that's out.
If they're out, that changes the dynamic for him completely.
It changes the entire market, I think, and he's going to have to come down. I can't see him getting 7 years, $200 million. That just seems to be a lot for a player who has a 795 OPS over the last 4 years. However, Alex Cora had signed a 3-year extension, right? You don't know how much longer he wants to manage. He's told us, hey, I don't want to be one of these like old managers like Terry Francona. I don't want to be one of these lifers. I don't want to be somebody who's around like Tony La Russa managing for all these years. What are you going to do with your manager who's one of the best managers in the big leagues and giving him a roster in this window where he has this contract?
And again, I said it earlier, and it bears repeating that you don't trade for Garrett Crochet if you're not going all in now. And all in meaning compete for a playoff spot, compete for the division title, compete for a deep run in October. Because right now, I mean, again, I'm sure they hope to extend him, but they've only got control of Garrett Crochet for 2 years. That means you got 2 years to do something with this guy that you just traded the farm away for. You've got to go in deeper now, which is why I agree. They've got to go after a right-handed bat. I think it's probably got to be one of those two guys. Taylor Hall is a name that's been thrown around. He's kind of Teoscar Hernandez light. Wouldn't probably cost a lot to get a trade from him. Good hitter. I mean, good. And a guy who'd probably, would translate well to Fenway Park. But you got to get somebody that you can slip in between Devers and Casas and break up that lefty group. Yeah,
you have to. And you look at just they said last year that they were too lefty heavy. Then they had more lefties than the last year, right? So you got Masataka Yoshida, who I think they should probably find a way to make a move on that, but I'm not sure if they will. But he clogs up the lineup, as we mentioned the other day. But they have to figure out that right-handed bat because it's too important at Fenway. And by the way, Alex Bregman, out of his 191 home runs, 158 of them have come to the pull side. So that's tailor-made for Fenway Park.
I think Bregman would be a great fit. Where does he play, though? If you go get out, is he second base?
I say you put him at second base first and see how everything shapes out,
and
right?
what do you do with Vaughn Grissom? He was the youngest player on the roster at the end of the year.
I know. Look.
And Christian Campbell knocking on the door behind him.
Hey, maybe
it's
it
a good
gives
problem
a little
to
bit
have.
more time. It's a great problem to have. Maybe you trade Vaughn Grissom right now because his stock is not. If he has another bad year, his stock is in the
It's pretty low right now,
and it's pretty low right now.
It's gone if he doesn't have a good year.
Maybe you just nip it in the bud and just trade him right now.
Is Wilyer Abreu with the Red Sox on opening day?
I don't think so.
Because that's the opposite. That's selling high.
Yeah,
right.
I don't
Gold
think so.
Glove outfielder. Will he be this guy in 5 years? You don't know.
I don't think so. I think, in this case too, was he 25, 26 years old? What's his max? Players get to their peak probably 27, 28. So he has a little bit more, and he's a very good player. But I'm not sure if he's ever going to get to the all-star level, right? I think he's going to be a very good big leaguer for a very long time. He has a Gold Glove. He played well. He spiraled it toward the end of the season, but he played well for most of it. I think you got to figure out a way to move him while his value's high.
Let's take a minute, look at the bullpen here as they add Aroldis Chapman. Interesting comments yesterday, and we talked to Craig Breslow. He said they did the due diligence. They did the investigation. They looked into it, the 30-day suspension for domestic violence-related issue they believe is behind him. You had better make sure of that because the backlash was immediate, and it's going to continue every time, until fans in Boston get to know the guy and they become comfortable that he is a changed person. You are diving into something that the Red Sox have done a pretty good job avoiding over the years with people.
And to add on to that point, he quit on the Yankees, right?
Yeah.
He had a situation in 2022 where he didn't like the fact that he was possibly going to be left off the ALD roster, didn't go to a mandatory workout, and then Aaron Boone just decided to take him off the roster completely, and his Yankee tenure was over. It was just a bad way to end. However, the next three teams, Kansas City, Texas, and then Pittsburgh, they raved about him. So what do we have? Time will tell. But I think from the baseball perspective, they got who they wanted.
You got velocity. We know that. I think he threw 220-something pitches over 100 miles an hour last year.
Amazing.
But we also know that he'll go wild from time to time.
Yep,
he'll start walking guys and losing it. And you're going to have to, that's a tough thing for our scorer. Difference is, unless other options fail, he's not going to be the closer.
Yeah.
That is Liam Hendriks' job to lose, I assume. I think Garrett Whitlock may factor into that. They think Justin Slayton has closer-type stuff. So Chapman would be, the Koji, like option 4, who slides up into that closer spot. But he can jump in when the closer needs a break. He has closer experience.
You just mentioned Garrett Whitlock, Justin Slayton, Liam Hendriks, Aroldis Chapman. If they had like a Tanner Scott, that's one of the most dynamic bullpens in baseball, because I truly believe that Garrett Whitlock is a reliever, right? I'm not like we've been doing this for too long, where he's been going back and forth between reliever, starter, reliever, and in some regard, I think it's hindered some of his development.
Sure.
So I think you put him in the bullpen with those guys plus Tanner Scott. That's scary.
But on the other side, you have Chapman, who's older, Hendricks coming back from Tommy John, Michael Fulmer, who would be a swing guy in there, right, coming back from an injury. Garrett Whitlock didn't pitch last year. A lot of guys. I mean, I know you round them up and you see what you got, but there's a lot. You need a lot of guys to be at their best for this bullpen to be what it can be. That's why, like you said, Tanner Scott, somebody who has no health issues and is pretty dependable, that would make all the difference for the makeup of this bullpen.
Just look at how 24 hours can change everything, right? We're looking at this rotation yesterday. Yankees signed Max Fried. The world is falling down, right? It's the sky's falling. So, but then the Red Sox come back and get Crochet today. The rotation looks completely different with him there. That would be the same thing with that bullpen if Tanner Scott joins the team.
Well, that's the thing, right? Back to the rotation now. Like, Tanner Houck is a really good number 2.
Yeah.
Right now you have all-stars at the top 2 spots in your rotation.
And now you can hide Bayo a little bit, right? He doesn't have
he's
to be.
He's a better 3 than he is a 2, or a 4 than he's 3.
Or a 4,
and if you
Giolito.
go get, here's a name I'll throw in there too, Walker Buehler. Not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Yeah. But now that you have a number 1, like Walker Buehler signing today wouldn't have excited a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I think you get Walker Buehler, you're like, okay, you still need a number 1.
Right.
But Walker Buehler in the middle of that rotation somewhere with his playoff experience and his history, like all of a sudden you're one arm away from not only having a good rotation, but having one of the better rotations in the game. And
I saw Walker Buehler pitch in the World Series, and that was the best I've seen him since he's come back, right? He hasn't looked right in the last 2 years. He was dynamite. He was dynamic in the postseason, and particularly in the World Series. So, again, you add a guy like that. We didn't talk about Sasaka. You can another guy.
Well, let's talk about Sasaki for a sec, because I mean it's a weird signing because everyone's going to offer him the same thing.
Yeah,
it's whatever they have an international slot bonus come January 15th. It could be like what, $5-6 million a year. The Red Sox feel they can make an argument because they have a very strong infrastructure, coaches, trainers who are Japanese, and the 3 of them on the major league staff. I think the only team in baseball with 3 Japanese natives on the major league staff for trainers and strength and conditioning and such. They've had a history of success with other Japanese players, pitchers and hitters. But everyone seems to think it's a foregone conclusion. He's going to L.A. That's an inside deal.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't go to L.A. at this point, right? Like, today, our friend Pete Abraham said, man, Dave Roberts was sitting at the table for the breakfast thing. He said it looked like a UN meeting. Because it's like, they just have everybody from all these Japanese reporters, obviously, and they got Otani and Yamamoto and Sasaki,
they might, yeah,
it's
they
getting
might.
out of hand.
Well, all right, so that's certainly somebody, now that he's posted, we'll be watching how that comes together. But it's a big day, and the way it happened, I said to Craig Breslow just at the end a little while ago, you don't do it today to get it done before the end of the deadline, but it's awful nice to get it done before it's over because you've been getting hammered for 2 days if you're the Red Sox, right? You didn't get Soto. You didn't get Fried. Dan Shaughnessy calls them the interest kings because they're in on everyone, but they're not getting it done. They got it done today. Now, it wasn't I think a lot of fans would still like to see them go win a free agent bidding, go get one of these right-handed bats that everybody else wants. But this is a good day for the Red Sox, and I thought it was really interesting that Craig Breslow said, listen, we don't care if we did it today or last week or next week. He goes, but when you're this close to getting a deal done and you don't get it done and the meeting's end, you all get on planes and you all go separate ways, and those things sometimes when you pick the phone back up aren't where they were. Yeah. So I think this group is feeling really good that they snuck it in before everyone broke up and went different directions. They got their guy. It's official. Red Sox are a better team now.
And it changes the tone of the fan base as well, right? It hurts for fans to come here or for us to come here, and there's nothing that we can necessarily report to fans of who they got, right? The Red Sox have not been in part of the party for a long time at winter meetings. I know Masataka Yoshida, they got that done a couple years ago, but it's been a lot of swings and misses. So for them to be able to do that, I think the tone of the fan base changes. It gives Breslow a little bit more breathing room to be able to look out and say, okay, what do we really need, versus feeling the pressure that this city brings on you with the expectations of, hey, we want guys. Now he can work it a little bit more and do what he needs to do.
And if you're a free agent, with money being equal, you can look at the Red Sox and say, all right, now wait a minute, that's a team that's getting closer to contending for a championship.
Yeah, because you're looking now, guys aren't necessarily taking the money. Blake Snell might have been able to get a little bit more.
Right.
But guys are going to situations where they're saying, where can I win? And it's not necessarily about, value and all this stuff. We talk about that a lot. But I think a lot of players are looking at that Dodgers situation and saying, I want to be a part of that, right? I want to be a part of a winning culture. You got to set the winning culture.
The Red Sox took a big step towards that today with the trade, bringing Garrett Crochet, the number one starter now for the Boston Red Sox, into tow. Julian, you broke the story. You've been busy today. We thank you for the time. Always
fun.
Appreciate
it.
Julian McWilliams, Scoops McWilliams, with us here as we wrap up this breaking news edition of 3:10 to left. The Garrett Crochet trade is official. We will see you again next time. For Julian McWilliams, I'm Tom.